Celtic are back in Champions League action tomorrow night as we head to Italy to play Europa League holders Atalanta in Matchday 3 of this season's competition. This is Tino with the countdown to kick-off show, joined here by Paddy. Paddy, your initial thoughts ahead of this one?
Nervous. I'd be lying if I wasn't. I think we get a bit of a humbling over in Dortmund, as we've spoke about many a time already. But you just never know. If we get an Atalanta team on a bad day and we click into form and play the football that I think Brendan Rodgers wants to play, you just never know. But they've got some really, really good players, and yeah, I think we respect them. They're not the biggest team in Italy, as we know, but they're the latest Europa League winners, and they've got a very, very good team around them. Lost a big player in Cooper Miners in the summer. I think he's a big loss to them, but yeah, I think we're going to be up against it. We just need to respect the opposition in this one.
Yeah, and their name was doing the rounds over the summer because they were in for Matt O'Reilly. They were certainly touted with a number of bids, actually 4 or 5 bids for Matt O'Reilly before he eventually goes to Brighton. And as I'd mentioned at the top of the piece there, they're the current Europa League holders. They humbled Bayer Leverkusen 3-0 or 3-1 in the final. Can't remember the
3-0.
3-0, and that was a Leverkusen who had gone through the whole campaign unbeaten to that point. So no easy task there. Paddy, you were in Dortmund. We've mentioned it a couple of times in the show about how chastening and experience that must have been. How disappointed were you on the night? Naturally very disappointed, but what was your thoughts on how we approached that game? Lots of talk about it, but what's your take on the system that night?
I think it wasn't anything different from what we've seen in the opening games of the league this season and in the League Cup. We've played some really, really good football, exciting football, and a real fluidity to what we're trying to do under Rodgers was very evident from the get-go. And he had every right to try that. I think when we touched on that last night, I think your brother said the same. Like, it had every right to really, really try and implement that same kind of style. What you also need to do, though, is make sure that you have a plan B in place and be ready to tinker with those tactics if it is going wrong for you. And I feel that's where we just didn't react quick enough. And as I said last night, I generally think we shut off after the third goal went in. I think a lot of them down tools and just thought that was it. That they were going to accept it was going to be a bit of a humbling night. They kept pressing with the same tactics. For me, I'm kind of looking for a little bit of sensibility there and trying to just kind of keep it at a minimum. As I said last night on the weekly show, stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding, and we didn't know how to do that.
I just overall don't think we showed any element of being streetwise against Dortmund. You can lose games of football, of course you can, but there's certainly a way to lose games. There's plenty of experience and was plenty of experience in the side that night. You look at your goalkeeper and Schmeichel, hugely experienced, Callum McGregor, the skipper, and various other guys who have now played a decent amount of European games at top level for Celtic. And I thought we just retreated back into our shell. And I think the frustration for me, but we spoke about it with Miff last night on the show, I don't mind the approach we took initially, but when it gets to 3-1 and certainly 4-1 and absolutely 5-1, you need to change it. You need to shut up shop and just go for damage limitation. I don't think we changed it at any point right up to the whistle. And it was the one, it's the big criticism I've had of Brendan Rodgers since he came back. He's been phenomenal since he's returned. He obviously done a great job last season. We're absolutely flying domestically this season. But Europe seems to be where his, I call it his blind spot? I don't know. It just seems to be where he can't quite translate his methods. I don't think his European record with Liverpool was any great shakes either. And he seems to struggle to make the adjustment from domestic into Europe. And we know how tall an order that is, Paddy, at Celtic. We've got some lesser opposition at times here. And then we go and face some of these top sides. And I think we've struggled to bridge that gap. And Rodgers, so far, his record has also shown that he has struggled to bridge the gap.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things that I've kind of toyed with the idea is he trying to really make a point in terms of this is the gap, because there's plenty of teams that play the same kind of system that Celtic trying to implement, but they're doing it with better players. And it's no disrespect to the team. It all comes down to the money involved in football. is he trying to identify the gaps in this team? Because for me, that's where a bit of naivety comes in, because I think when we look at, some of the historical big wins we've had in Europe under the likes of Martin O'Neill, under the likes of Neil Lennon, and under the likes of Gordon Strachan, they had a plan. They dug deep in certain games and made it very difficult for the opposition. Whereas when we press the way we're pressing, you need to be able to have that quality across the full 11, and we don't have that yet.
Yeah.
So my only thinking is he trying to basically highlight what he needs? Because I do think he tried to do that in his first spell, and we've seen the results against Paris Saint-Germain, we've seen the results against Barcelona. It's not on. It's not on as a supporter. And listen, you can go and make the claim and really say to the board, hey, the reason this has happened is because, the level isn't there. But ultimately, there still needs to be a bit of respect to your name too.
There really does. It's funny, I get your point. I don't think he's deliberately going out to say we don't have the resources here and look at the results you get on the back of that. I think it comes down more to Brendan Rodgers, in a similar way to Ange Postecoglou, just being so hell-bent and stubborn on his approach to football. I think he's a fairly long-in-the-tooth coach. He's not one of these up-and-coming young managers. He's played his way and had his philosophy for some time. And I just think he's got to this stage in his coaching career. What is Rodgers, 51, something like that? Yeah. I think he's got to this stage where he's just not changing it. And whether he's got the personnel or not, I don't think he's going to adjust. And I've said this a few times in the show. We all want to play like Barcelona 2009 or Brazil or whatever. You can only do so if you've got the resources and the players available. And at the moment, we've got some very decent players. We've got some players we're excited about. But across the board, and it's a system that needs, if you're going for a high aggressive press, you need to have 10 outfield players that are capable. And you would debate at this moment in time whether we do have. Paddy, we'll look at the lineup. There's a lot of strong rumours doing the rounds about Cameron Carter-Vickers and whether or not he's going to return. He did train this morning. There's pictures of him training up at Lennoxtown. There's an image of him and John Kennedy. But he also trained at the weekend and failed to make the game against Aberdeen. So I think he's getting back to something like the fitness levels that will be required. But it remains to be seen whether he features at all here. I don't know if he's got on the plane or not. There's mixed stories whether he's travelled out to Bergamo. So who knows? If he does make it, and it is a big if at this moment in time, how big a boost is it, given how we suffered defensively against Dortmund?
It'd be a massive boost, but for me, I think he has to be fit enough to last the 90 minutes. If not 90 minutes, even at least 75. I think, if he's not up to match sharpness, then do we jeopardise him with putting him in there and then potentially sustaining another injury, which then starts to affect the league side of things. I think it's a bit of a risk. I would really hope and really think that our team, especially at this stage in this group and in this league table, is okay to go into this game. I'm not too confident in our backline as we might discuss it will be, but do we go and take a risk early on in this competition where there's other games to come, more important games at Celtic Park as well, and go and potentially jeopardise his return from injury? I don't know. I think it would be a bit foolish.
I agree with you. I think if this were a must-win, if this were Celtic are, I would say, hopeful of picking up points against the likes of Young Boys at home, Bruges at home, maybe getting something out of the Leipzig game, I would put them down in the must-win category. I wouldn't put this in as, this isn't to sound defeatist at all. Really hopeful we can get out there and get a result here against Atalanta, but it's not a disaster if you don't get the 3 points and you can regroup and set yourself for the games ahead. Before we get to the lineup, Paddy, just to thank the folks as always that have joined us in the live. We've got Gypsy King, Shane O'Sullivan, who's just joined us, Seamus McKenna, James, and a few others. We'll be here for another 20 minutes, give or take. So if you've got any specific comments or questions for myself and Paddy, let us know and we'll do our very best to get to them. Paddy, the goalie takes care of itself. Kasper Schmeichel starts in goals. Will we base it here on Carter-Vickers not making it? And you can give us your back four from there?
Yeah, I would say so. Carter-Vickers would obviously be in the team if I felt he was going to be fully fit. But I just don't think there's been much signalling towards that. Listen, if he is involved, brilliant, a really good boost for us. If he is ready to take that that place tomorrow night. But for me, I do think it will be a centre-half pair and a Scales and Trusty tomorrow. And yeah, Alistair Johnson and what looks to be like it's going to be Alex Bailly at left back as well.
Yeah, so I suppose we've spent a bit of time here talking about CCV. Greg Taylor, who's been a mainstay of the defence, it looks like he's still out the picture. I actually don't know his injury. It seems to be something innocuous, but I've not actually heard too much detail on it. Maybe that's on me. But yeah, it seems that Bailly would step in and this would be his first start in Europe. He came off the bench against Dortmund and looked okay at times, and maybe not so okay at other times, which is probably summed up his short time at Celtic so far. I think you can see he's a very talented footballer. He can play ball, but whether he's robust enough, or strong enough defensively, we just don't know. We've only seen glimpses of it. How confident would you feel if he's going to make up the left back spot tomorrow night?
I think it's one of those ones, if he's our only fit left back, then he obviously has to start. I want to see a bit more from us going forward, but also this is a big test for him. I don't think you get to the stage of your career with Barcelona where they're offering you an extension without having something about you, Tino. I've seen glimpses from him where I've been impressed. But yeah, I think it was some of the guys were commenting after the game on Saturday. Is it going to last 90 minutes? I think he's still got to regulate his fitness, get up to speed with how Celtic play, the franticness of our league. It's a little bit different coming up against an Italian team, but they make you run. That's the thing, that they're very, very technically gifted, and they make you move about the park a lot more than what you'll be doing on a Saturday and a Sunday in Scotland. So I would like to see him play. I think he could fit in, and I think he could be promising for us tomorrow night. But big test for him.
Absolutely. I noticed an article doing the rounds where Brendan Rodgers was speaking about how strong Atalanta are defensively. It's a huge part of Italian football. Italian footballs are famed for defending strongly, the catenaccio, take a 1 or 2 goal lead and then defend it to death. And I'm not quite saying Atalanta are like that, but what Rodgers highlighted as one of their massive or key strengths is their man marking. They're just, they find their man and they stick to him. And I think to an extent they will potentially try and suffocate us and stop us from getting out. There's a couple of suggestions, a couple of comments which are worth debating, Paddy. So Shane O'Sullivan, Shane is saying that he can't see us being as open as we were against Dortmund and that we will be more streetwise, especially after dropping points at the weekend. And on that note, I'll ask the question about this potential double pivot. Callum McGregor, I think, was woefully exposed against Dortmund. Do you know what? It's a hard job for the best number 6 in football. You look at guys like Rodri and other guys that do that kind of role. It's a tough game. And for Callum McGregor, up against the kind of powerhouse that were in our Dortmund, it was just too much. It was too much to ask for, to have this one sitting midfielder and the 2 more advanced guys on the night. Who was it? Engels and Bernardo against Dortmund?
Yeah.
We now need to look at the possibility of setting up with the double pivot. Miff loves the chat, doesn't he? The two double pivots sitting. Is it McGregor and Engels, McGregor and Bernardo? Does Luke McCowan get involved? Is there an alternative? What do you think?
I generally don't think we'll see it. I really don't. I think what he'll demand more of is those 2 more advanced players. I think if you think back to the games, even away from home, we made it a little bit stuffy in midfield because of how narrow Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate went fit, or I'm trying to think, Bernardo in some of the games last season when they played together. They made it a lot more narrower. I just felt we were so spread out against Dortmund that the gap was far too easy. Now, as I said on the weekly show last night, there's an element where we make the gap a bit wider to allow our 2 inverted fullbacks to kick into play. I think that's going to be the change tomorrow. I think the 2 fullbacks will be a bit more disciplined in the press.
Yeah. And on that, if that is the approach, who are the midfield 3 for you? Then it's Callum McGregor, isn't it? And who else?
It would be Callum McGregor, absolutely. Ideally, I would love to see the 2 on the double pivot, and it would be Arne Engels next to him. I think Engels will play a bit more advanced, and I think tomorrow night he will go with Paulo Bernardo.
Yeah. There's a comment from San Fran Celtic. San Fran, big friend of the show, and he asks or says we could do with a decent game from Engels. And he's right. Arne Engels is early in his Celtic career, and we understand and appreciate particularly as a young guy, actually, it can take time to settle in. He looked pretty promising, initially scored a couple of penalties and seemed to be settling in well. I think it's fair to say that he's drifted in the last few games. He's still been involved in the Belgium setup. He was there over the last 2 international breaks, so there's a confidence that would bring. But this is why we signed him. I know it's early in his career, but these are the games you're looking for your £11 million record signing to step up. And I would definitely be starting him. I think he's a talented guy. He had a brilliant pass into Kyogo at the weekend, didn't he, for the first goal? He put him in down the right-hand side. He also had a great ball to Kyogo that could have made it 3-0. He's got it in his locker. But I think we need to see a 90-minute performance from the guy.
Listen, I don't take anything away from that. I think this is where he wants to be playing. This is the level. This is the reason he signed for Celtic, is to come and play in this tournament. For him, he needs to step up. He needs to step up. I still think we're giving the benefit of the doubt to the likes of Alex Bailly. I think even some are saying the same for Adam Ida, just trying to find his legs again and get himself into the team. I think the same can be said for, obviously, Austin Trusty to an extent as well. I know he's got his critics, understandably so. But I also think Engels is still finding his feet in this system. It is different. As we've seen before, the players that are used to playing it becomes free-flowing because they've been playing and implementing it for so long. So I still think there is time for them to really get up to that speed, up to that level in order to implement it. Tonight could be the night it clicks. We've spoke about those games where, tomorrow night could be the night that it clicks for them. We've spoke about those games that the players have mentioned before where, something just went right, something made sense. It doesn't happen overnight. We need to remember that this is, again, going back to the fact that a lot of these players were brought in the final week. They're not getting the same time in pre-season in order to buy into the system and understand exactly what Rodgers is looking for. But they will learn from each game, and they would have taken a lot from the 7-1 game, believe it or not. I think that that will hurt a lot of the guys that are on that part tomorrow night. And as we said in the show last night, they've got a point to prove after the result on Saturday too. So it's whether the mindset is there for these guys. And £11 million, a lot of weight on your shoulders there already. We need to back them. We need to get behind them and support them, as fans should. Yeah.
You've talked about that learning process and that learning curve. I was reading comments from the Atalanta manager, Gian Piero Gasperini, very experienced manager, kind of wily old fox kind of guy. He was very complimentary about Brendan Rodgers, and he was saying, as an attacking manager, you need to stick to your principles and you shouldn't bend on them for anybody. So he admires what Rodgers is doing and how he approaches things.
Just saying that, so we're sitting wide open for him tomorrow.
Just go for it, Brendan. See what happens.
Yeah, thanks.
But he was also talking about how his sides had some really tough results as they started to become a European force. I think they lost 5 goals to Arsenal at one point. They lost 5 goals to Man City. Yeah. And he says, but over time, they then started to draw those games. And then they started to become a winning European side. So much so that they picked up the Europa League last season. So there is a learning curve. You can't just flick a switch. And I think from a Celtic fan's point of view, where we're at right now is all you want to see tomorrow night in Italy are signs of progress. A win would be amazing. A draw would be pretty good too. But I think we can actually make peace with the fact that you might lose the game. But if you do so in a manner where you've been in the game, you've been competing, you've been showing signs of your own personality as a team. Mm-hmm. The team against Dortmund was unrecognisable. Celtic had come out the traps flying. I think they'd played and won 9 games in total across all competitions so far before Dortmund. But we never showed any of our personality or any of the things that led to those 9 victories before it. And I think as long as we see something of that nature tomorrow night in Italy, yes, we always want to win or at least get a positive result. But I think we'd all be happy enough, Paddy, if we lost in the right manner, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, obviously we want to win. We want to win every game we go into. I think what I've said to the guys is that if we do set up the way that we did against Dortmund, there needs to be an element of we're trying to keep that result respectable. I wouldn't want to see another hiding tomorrow. I think the fans would really start to question what the idea is, what the thinking is from Brendan Rodgers if that was the case tomorrow night. But I do feel that tomorrow is a good chance for us to go and play our own game. almost as if the pressure's off, because as I've said to you before, no one going into this game expects us to go and win it. I think that when we seen the fixtures come out, we kind of said if we were managed to get a point out of Dortmund or Atalanta, that was good going. If we end up with the 2 defeats, there's still a long way to go in this tournament. I think the players need to step up a bit. You know, we are speaking about a manager. We are speaking about the way he wants us to play football. There's plenty in the locker. There's plenty in our team that know what it takes in these kind of games. And it's up to the ones that are new on the scene, up to the ones that are still trying to find their feet to really buy into what's going on. It's going to be difficult tomorrow night. I don't see us winning. I do think we will get beat tomorrow. But we do need to approach it with the right manner. And again, I just, from what I could see, they couldn't get near Dortmund in the last game. Yeah. Is that through a lack of effort? Is that being caught in the headlights? I don't know, but that can't happen again.
I think you're right, and I hope you're right, and I hope that we're going to make the necessary adjustments to make sure it doesn't happen. Paddy, we've covered the midfield. I think you've gone for McGregor, Engels and Bernardo. Yeah. We can't not mention, it's a quick segue, but we can't not mention a Celtic midfield over the years without thinking of Paul McStay, who turned 60 today. So the Maestro's birthday. Quick comments from yourself, big fan of the Maestro?
Huge fan. I was very fortunate in my younger age to be involved in his testimonial. My 2 brothers played in the game before it, so a really special experience for them. They were rubbing shoulders with the likes of Coronation Street and Casualty Stars that were involved in it. But they get some cracking pictures with some of the guys for the class of '92 at Man United, and some good pictures with some of the Celtic players as well. But a special night at Celtic Park that I think I was only 6 years old, Tino, but I remember it very clearly, even though it was a very foggy night.
Yeah, Paul McStay, an absolute Celtic hero. So hopefully he's having a great 60th birthday. I think he's still out in Australia, so hopefully he's doing great wherever he is. Paddy, another quick segue. I won't keep as long. Greg McMillan in the comments says, Tino, cracking print. Where did you get it? He's referring to the Lisboa print behind me. Greg, it's Paddy's. So Paddy, can you let us know where you can get such an item?
I've had it that long. I bought it in 2017. I will try and dig out the website and we'll put it on Twitter, mate. I cannot remember.
Right, so I'll leave that one with you. Let's get back to it, Paddy. So we've covered the defence, covered the midfield, but up top there's a question. I asked a question on last night's show, and Maestro, coincidentally, has asked here, do we start Adam Idah up front? I think it was a no for you, Paddy, but is that based on current form, or do you still think it's just Kyogo's the man for that role?
I just think Kyogo's the man for that role. I think he's the best striker at the club. Jamie made a good point last night in the show that, you know, one touch was an assist, the next touch was a goal. He's lethal. He is lethal if the service is right. And I read one of the comments, I can't see it now, sorry, but the guy was basically saying that we should be clinical tomorrow night. This is a big test for Kyogo, in my opinion, and I think he has had those games where he's missed really, really good opportunities, but if we do get those chances tomorrow night, again, I just feel like if you go into it feeling that the pressure's off a little, that's where he sometimes really does come good. I'd love to see him play. I'd love to see Kyogo play. I think Idah, we need to kind of bed him back in more domestically, but probably still will have a part to play in the last 20 minutes, I would assume, tomorrow.
It's a funny one. I'd be happy enough either way if Rodgers started Adam Idah and thought he was a man for the role. I kind of think him and Kyogo are very different types of strikers, and I kind of think to an extent Adam Idah is built for this kind of role. You know, I think and hope we go with more of a 4-5-1 than an out-and-out 4-5-3. So we'll get to the wingers shortly, but just say it as Maeda and Kuhn, that they're a bit deeper than they were against Dortmund. They were so high, particularly Kuhn. Kuhn was high. But if they were a bit more reserved to make it almost a 5 in midfield with one man up top, I wonder if that would be really suited to Adam Idah's game. But the other side of it is, and I don't think there's any getting away from it, he's just not at himself just now. He's just not quite hit the ground running. He had some huge moments for his last season. He's had a couple of decent goals this season. Great finish against Bratislava, for example. But he's not firing on all cylinders, and it'd be a huge risk to leave out your talisman. Kyogo is one of the most talented guys we've got, one of the best goal scorers we've seen in such a long time, and it would be a bold call not to start him. So we'll see what he does through the number 9 position. In the wings, Paddy, I've suggested there Maeda and Kuhn. Is that the move for you?
Yeah, I would stick with it. Again, two guys that we've obviously spoke about is Maeda, a little bit off the pace fitness-wise. And we spoke about Nicholas Kuhn and the performance in Dortmund. Now, whether that was a tactical thing, again, he was an empty jersey, in my opinion. I don't think he was anywhere near it. And what an incredible season he's having so far as well. So these guys, it's up to them to really, show what they're about and really stake a claim in this tournament and show that why we should be here as well. So yeah, I'd like to see the two of them start. They've been the informed players for us in those positions this season. If they're fully fit, they should be in the starting 11.
I think so as well. And as I say, I think it was Sanfran who said that it's about time we got a game out of Engels. It's also high time we got a European performance out of Kuhn. I think he's been great for us. I think he's right now our best player this season, and his goals and assist return represent that. But again, you sign these guys for the big stage, don't you?
I would remind you, he's only played 2 European games for us, but Tino, I know where you're coming from.
Third time lucky, Paddy.
One of them being an absolute humbling, of course.
So the 11, just to recap, and I'm pretty much in agreement with you. Kasper Schmeichel in goals, 4-3-3 of Johnson right back, Bailly left back, Trusty and Scales in the centre. If CCV doesn't make it, a midfield 3 of McGregor, Engels and Bernardo. Whether we see this double pivot for McGregor, who knows? And up top, Kyogo, Maeda and Kuhn, which has generally been Brendan Rodgers' go-to for the season so far. What we'll do, Paddy, you and I, at the moment, we'll discuss Atalanta and some of their danger men. In the meantime, anyone watching live in the comments, let us know at this stage. We're heading towards the end of the recording. Let us know your own scoreline predictions. I'll get the prediction off Paddy just shortly as well. But let us know what you think is going to play out here in Italy tomorrow night. Paddy, we had a wee chat before coming on about the danger men for Atalanta. There's 2 in particular. There is Matteo Retegui, if I've pronounced that right. Something like that. He's a 25-year-old forward. He's got 10 goals for the season so far, 8 of which are for Atalanta, 2 for Italy in the most recent international break. And he signed for 22 million euros from, I think it was Genoa, in the summer. He's got to be one to look out for, hasn't he?
He has, and I think he's getting more and more comfortable and he's moved to Atalanta. And I think again, you just listen to that fee, for example. We've got a lot of our fans that are still questioning why we spent 6 million in Trusty. I was speaking to Miff after the show. This day and age, that's not a lot of money now. It really isn't. £22 million on a striker from Genoa. I know the league's different, I get it, but I still think that we need to wake up a bit in terms of where we should be spending our money, especially if we're going to be playing in this tournament every season. I think we can spend a little bit more. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to be a threat for us. He seems to have taken a little bit of the limelight this season away from Lookman, who I'm sure we're going to go into as well. But we'll need to have our wits about us tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about Lookman. He made all the headlines because he scored all 3 goals in the 3-0 win over Leverkusen in the Europa League final. And he's got an interesting story that has led him to Atalanta. Brendan Rodgers used to manage him. He was at Leicester for a time. I think he had spells at Everton. And he also started out at Charlton. So he's had what we call it, a journeyman story, but he's bumped around before finding himself in Serie A and ultimately becoming a European trophy winner. He's 27 years of age. He's not had a flying start to this campaign. I've noted that he's got 2 league goals for the season so far, so not a lot, and 1 Champions League goal he scored in the 3-0 win over Shakhtar recently. But any guy that scores a hat-trick in a European final, it's got to be worth a watching, hasn't it?
100%, especially against such a well-structured team like Leverkusen. I think he's found his feet. He's a very, very good player, possesses great pace, and I think, watching even the Super Cup this year, even though it's a bit of a glorified pre-season friendly, he definitely had Real Madrid thinking as well, how to combat against them. So he might have had a bad start to the season, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to switch over against us tomorrow night. So we just need to be ready for it as best we can.
Yeah, aside from Retegui and Lookman, Atalanta in general, they're having an okay season, is what I would say. They're currently sitting 6th. They're not a whole lot behind the front runners, but they're currently sitting 6th in the table. In terms of their Champions League performances so far, though, 3-0 away to Shakhtar. Obviously, that was played at a neutral venue. That was over in Poland. And in game 1, match day 1, they drew nothing each with Arsenal. So it's a pretty credible result. What do you think overall, Paddy? How did they approach it? I was talking about must-wins for Celtic and the games that we should be focusing on. they'll be looking at this as a prime opportunity for them to pick up a win, won't they?
They will, and I think one of the guys made a very good comment earlier on there, just talking about, they've got quite a hard running after they play ourselves. I think we need to be ready for it. They'll be itching to come and try and get the 3 points against us. I think they've got some difficult away trips coming up. They're taking it seriously. I think winning the Europa League last season is not an easy thing to do now. And I think that the competition's definitely got a lot more serious in the last 5-6 years. So very difficult thing to do. They have been there and thereabouts for quite a while in Europe. As you said, Gasparini's mentioned about building up to a level where you start getting bigger results against bigger teams and holding your own in the top level. So they're no mugs. And yeah, a different kind of start for them in Serie A, but again, a league which, bottom can sometimes end up surprising and beating anyone as well. I think it will be a difficult game. I really do. They've got some really, really good experience here as well. One of the players, Zappacosta, has been about for quite a bit, a tidy footballer on the left. So, no, listen, I think it's going to be a hard one. I think we're going to really need to dig deep to try and get anything from the game. But as I've said before, if we definitely go in and try and play the same system that we started with in Dortmund, we'll get picked off.
Well, either way, whatever approach we take is going to be a tough night and a long night, and just the big hope, stressing it again, is that lessons have been learned, and you don't want to ever be in a position where you're saying a 7-1 tanking was one of the best things that could have happened to us this season. And as I say, with you being in the stadium that night, I'm sure it didn't feel particularly good at the time, no. But it might be something that stands the players in good stead. I guess we'll find out in a little over 24 hours or so in terms of just how much we've learned from it. Paddy asked the guys in the live for their predictions. So before I come to you, I'll highlight some of them. Kaiser's gone for 3-1 to Celtic. I like it. Jim Hunter, 1 each, and that would be okay as well. A couple of other draws. Seamus McKenna's gone for 2 each. San Fran has also gone for 2 each, but Atalanta scored a late equaliser, so it feels like a loss. It's you're killing my buzz, San Fran. Pablo Nicol, 2-1 to the Hoops. It's mixed, isn't it, Paddy? That there's general optimism, and I suppose that'll always be the case. It's very unusual for us to be talking about accepting a defeat because it's not really the Celtic way and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But you've also got to be real about things and realise where we are in this level of football at this moment in time. Generally speaking, and I know that there's obviously going to be stronger sides and weaker sides, and Bratislava will be in the weaker bracket. I would say Dortmund, and to an extent Atalanta, would be in the top half of the 36 teams in the tournament. So it's not easy at this level. We know that, and we know it's going to be another tough night ahead. Paddy, I'll come to you now, though, for your scoreline prediction. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think obviously it's a team that's... I think they're pretty free-flowing in their football as well, especially with Lookman. I do think they'll score against us, but I do think we'll score as well. I think 2-1 Atalanta.
2-1 Atalanta. Geez, there's a worse one than that that's come in from the underwater cabbage salesman, whatever that means. He's gone 5-1 Atalanta, which I don't know. I mean, it's not an impossible result, but I can never find myself. I don't think I've ever predicted Celtic to lose, and that's maybe just my own kind of blinkered viewpoint. So I'm trying to be real about it. I'm trying to be optimistic, try to be glass half full. I'm going to predict that we can steal a point, that we can go out there, we can dig deep, we can learn our lessons. I don't think we've got it in us just to lose 1 goal. So let's go 2 each, Paddy, and we'll see what happens. Thanks to everyone who's joined us with the comments. Some great stuff coming in tonight. Someone, I can't see right now, someone said you can get the print behind me here in the studio at a website called Social Recluse. So maybe that's a shout for Greg McMullen, who asked the question.
Nice.
Thanks for replying on that one. Paddy, your own final thoughts. It's Matchday 3, a win and a loss so far. Your final comments.
Yeah, listen, as I've said to you, I think that having those 2 extra games now in the Champions League, and obviously we're not really having to shape up and play the same team twice in this format now as well, it is in our favour. I think that there are bigger games for us to kind of look at in terms of what we can get points from. This is, I wouldn't say a free hit, absolutely not. I think we still need to go into it and hope for the best and really try and see what we can do. I've just got a gut feeling that we will get beat on the night. would love to see us go and surprise me. I would love to see them go and prove me wrong. I think I'm reading some of the comments here, and it has got me excited in the sense that there are a few saying, let them go and do that, let them go and give people something to think about. I'd love to see that. I really would. I'd love to see Arne Engels go and have the performance of his life. Callum McGregor getting a bit more support from his two midfielders in front of him. I've seen a few saying that he's rubbish in Europe. That's absolute nonsense, guys. I'm sorry on that one, but he's one of our best players. He was just left far too exposed in Dortmund. I think that they need to get the system right tomorrow night to stand any chance.
Yeah, and who knows, Paddy, but as much as Brendan Rodgers said what he said after the Dortmund game, I think there will be tweaks, whether they're subtle tweaks or more apparent ones in terms of the two centre midfielders and Adamir up top. But I just think you can't possibly hope to go in with the same approach and get any sort of result. So let's see how it all plays out in the night. Thanks again, as I mentioned, to the various folks who have put in some brilliant comments. Thanks to everyone who continues to listen to the podcast. Reminder for anyone that doesn't already know, it's a 5:45 kickoff in Italy tomorrow, so a bit earlier than we're used to. What we'll do on that basis is we'll try and get back online shortly after the final whistle, maybe something around about the back of 8. We'll keep you updated on socials and we'll bring you the final whistle show. But in the meantime, hopefully a special night for Celtic in Europe. We'll just need to wait and see. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.